Cue the music.
Cue the music. We don't have music yet, but we got an old buddy working on that.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, welcome to the Kings Creek podcast. The whole goal of this episode is to basically introduce the podcast, introduce some of the people that you're going to be hearing from, i.e. Jesse and myself, and just kind of give you guys an idea of what to expect moving forward from this podcast. That said, for those who might not know what Kings Creek is, Jesse, why don't you take the floor and just kind of introduce Kings Creek again to the listeners and tell them what it's all about.
Well, first off, this is pretty cool. It's been a long time coming, but, I still cannot answer what Kings Creek is any better than I could any other time. Mm-hmm. It's our clothing brand, and we started it in 2014, and it was birthed out of our church, and then we decided to take it public and just go all in with it. And it kind of grew, and it's created a lot of great opportunities. We've met a lot of cool people, still do meet a lot of cool people, a lot of cool relationships. And it's just kind of created a space for us to meet neat people and talk about cool stuff. And
yeah,
it's pretty simple to me. I wish I could hire somebody. That's probably a good thing for somebody like you on the outside to be able to explain it, because when you're in the middle of it, it's so hard to explain. But
yeah,
I mean, the nuts and bolts are our clothing line. We're in retail stores and online, and it's just kind of our take on all things apparel related.
Yeah. So from an outsider's perspective, you gave like the humble answer, which is commendable. But the Kings Creek brand is so much more than just a brand and a clothing line. As you kind of alluded to, it's really about the relationships that you guys have created, whether that's in Nashville, whether that's in professional sports, or just locally in the hometown. It's really about, the relationships and connecting with people.
Right.
And so, sorry to interrupt.
No.
But you were the very first natural guest on the show that I have, For the Nation podcast, where you weren't like a friend of mine or anything prior, reached out and you gracefully said, yeah, sure, let's do it. And from there, we've kind of formed a really cool relationship. And I've gotten to not only hear it in an interview, but experience the relationship building and connection that you guys have so gracefully woven into the brand of Kings Creek.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. I mean, you really wish that more people would realize that, you try to tell people that, look, it's not about selling hats and stuff for us. It's about the relationships. But it's kind of like when I was in the automotive industry that, I used to tell people, man, I can't wait till this thing tears up. And they would just look at me crazy. They were like, what are you talking about? And just kind of joke and laugh it off. But I was like, well, then, I mean, I can tell you all day long how we're going to treat you as a customer and the benefits of doing business with us. But until something bad happens, you really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I can tell you till I'm blue in the face. And that's the same thing with our brand. And I don't think it's necessary. I'd like to, as humbly as I can, just say that it's maybe a little bit more in our DNA, mine and Melissa's and our families, and now what's grown in our business and our employees. It's just kind of an oddball way of thinking about things, but putting other people first and trying to help as many people get what they want out of life has become a goal of ours. And then the main thing is living our life, and then our business is kind of shaped around our life, mm-hmm. instead of, allowing ourselves to just, give each other what's left over from our career. So we just wanted to have our lives and do life. And then our career kind of was what got the leftovers.
Right. Yeah, I really like that. One thing that I took almost immediately from our first meeting and wanted to plug into my podcast immediately was giving greatly. That's kind of that's what I termed it as. Obviously, you might call it something else, but the idea that if you're going to do something, you give it your all, whether that's financially, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, if you're going to do something, do it, and do it with a good intent.
Right.
And that's one aspect that I hope definitely will carry into this podcast moving forward. I guess we should introduce ourselves a little bit and kind of talk about ourselves. Sure. So you're Jesse Strickland. Why don't you kind of take that?
Well, that's another one. I'm just the hat guy, but I'm married. I have 2 kids. I say kids. I mean, they're young adults. Mm-hmm. I've got a son, Noah, that worked with our company for a long time, and he's 22 years old, be 23 in a couple months. And then I've got a daughter that's about to graduate from college and start grad school. She's 21 years old. And it's just, we're young empty nesters, trying to just be productive in life. I mean, we're pretty plugged in our community, and that's kind of where we get our joy, our fulfillment, mm-hmm. Trying to get in what I consider to be way too many things. I mean, we're involved with a lot, from time to time. It gets tough to juggle it, but that's just kind of become a definition of our life. Just juggling whatever's in front of you. And so, but other than that, I'm just started this brand. I've got a love for the outdoors and a passion for the outdoors. And it's been kind of cool to see how your passions change, and it's not that I'm not still passionate about the outdoors, but I realize that what I'm really passionate about is people.
Right.
And I really enjoy spending time with people from every different walk of life. And if you're not an outdoorsman, that's fine too. I mean, I don't really understand it. Probably don't trust you as much as I would somebody else, and that's obviously tongue in cheek. I just enjoy being with people.
Yeah. Noah is a voice that hopefully you guys will hear. I've talked to him about coming on here, so I'll get him on here. Don't worry.
I love it.
Yeah. I guess to piggyback off that, my name is Mike Wojcik. I guess if you listen to this, the most notable thing about me is that I would have For the Nation podcast. But before that, and most importantly, I'm a husband and a father to Jenna Wojcik, my wife, and our son, Jackson. He is 17 months as of the time of this recording and is a handful. And if anybody, I guess the big takeaway for parenthood right now is everything that parents told you prior to you having a child, like, oh, you'll get it one day, and you think you do until the moment comes and your world changes in an instant, and then you understand.
For sure.
I get it. So that's probably my most proud accomplishment as of now, and I think might only be like one of the best accomplishments that you can have as a father is to have children and a wife to share that with. Nonetheless, I do have For the Nation podcast. That was a show. That's how we got connected here. And that's me in a nutshell. Pretty simple. Lucky to be here, really. I guess that's the main takeaway for listeners. I'm the lucky one here.
No, I mean, we can argue that, obviously. And the main thing I think that I would like to get across is, we're not coming out proclaiming to have all this knowledge and all this revolutionary, methods of dealing with problems.
Yeah, that's right.
And we just realize that it's got to be done together. And maybe the difference in our age, we're bringing 2 different, I guess, aspects and 2 different opinions of things. And they're not always going to be the same, I'm sure. I haven't met anybody yet, thankfully, that agrees with 100% of what I say. That doesn't mean I'm not going to continue to try to persuade you.
Right.
And convince you that I'm right. But it is fun to have good, healthy conversation. And I absolutely love watching you and your family and raising Jackson. And I think, man, if I could just get one more shot. I just want one more shot, because by the time you think you get it figured out, and I'm pretty good at it, now all of a sudden the kids are grown, and I promise you they're not interested in what I have to say.
Yeah.
You just hope maybe something stuck from a long time ago.
Yeah. But it's one of those moments, I think, that comes full circle, because when the moment comes where they become parents, Lord willing, they'll understand. And then that information that you thought you lost becomes a whole lot more valuable.
I cannot wait for the day they start admitting how right we were for so long.
Yeah.
And how they tortured us for so long. And their little unappreciative selves and I'm just kidding. I mean, they're very appreciative and we're grateful for them, but it is kind of neat when you start connecting the dots in those ding ding start going off, and you're like, man, I see what they're talking about. So
yeah. All right. I guess it's important for us to first describe the values that define Kings Creek. And I think you're great to answer that question. So what values do you think transcend the brand of Kings Creek Apparel?
I mean, I think the shortest list is to Jesse Strickland and his family. I mean, our faith in God, transcends everything else. And we truly have tried to live a life that reflects that. And we've tried to stay not just, in a positive frame of mind regarding that, but we try to live out our lives in worship, not just, turning it on and turning it off. Everything that we do, we try to, and to me, it's a little bit more natural that way. You don't have to remember how you're supposed to act from time to time. I mean, it's a true, transparent, attitude. Mm-hmm. And we also have seen that, when you have some sort of success with a brand and people are so quick to pick you up and put you on a pedestal and things of that nature. So part of the goal of our brand has been just to be transparent, to show the good, the bad, the ugly. It's tough running a business. It's tough being married. It's tough. I mean, life's tough. And we never want to come across as one unapproachable. That's probably my biggest fear, is to be unapproachable. But our brand just represents our lifestyle, and that lifestyle is God first. And I'm definitely not going to follow the lead with a lot of people, God, family, faith, none of that stuff. But it's to us, if we have to say it, then we're failing. It should be evident in how we treat people. It should be evident in our business. And it's not always the most popular position to be in, but we've been told from the beginning, we know the position that we're going to be in, and we know how we're going to be thought of, which is fine. Accountability is a good thing. And consequences to maybe not living up to that level of expectations from people.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's healthy too, mistakes. But we have a desire to serve the Lord, and we have a desire to serve our community. And then aside from that, we have a desire to serve each other, and to serve is whoever's in front of us. And that's probably the biggest mantra that we've got, is just serve who's ever in front of us, and keep the main thing, in the words of the great theologian Kirby Smart.
That's interesting that you would say that, especially being an Alabama fan.
It's very tough to say that, but I could not, I couldn't get around it.
Yeah. So I guess then the main thing for this podcast is, like, it's basically an extension of the brand. That's the way I like to think about this. In working together with you, my frame of reference is it's extending the brand in the sense of it's conversations with that transparency that you talked about, the good, the bad, the ugly, getting to know our guests, and just conversations, like you said, from your perspective, then from maybe a younger perspective. Not saying you're old, but you know what I'm saying?
Definitely old.
And just hopefully throw in a comedic twist now and then, and just be genuine, just connect with people. I think that's kind of your main goal in this, is to connect and serve others through this. This is just another arm and extension in doing so.
Right. And I mean, I think we're pretty open-minded about it too. It's kind of like when we started the brand, we thought that the outdoor industry was going to be that's the avenue for growth. We were surprised when, we kind of took the Nashville run, and Nashville kind of got us to the next level with some friends of ours there. So I'm very hesitant about trying to put too much of my opinion of where we should go or where we shouldn't go. We're just going to go wherever the podcast leads us. We're going to have some pretty interesting guests on that I think people will be able to connect with. Mm-hmm. And the main goal, obviously our business is attached to it. But our main goal is, the business is a byproduct. If we can help the one, we're definitely more than willing to leave the 99 to help the one. So, and it's not going to all be so just uptight and just very black and white. We're going to hopefully dive into some things that are, there's a lot of situations in life that "and" is definitely okay to use. You can be something and something else. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be so line in the sand, you're going to draw that line in the sand, and it's just either or. The days of either or, regarding certain things to us, obviously are still relevant, but not in the biggest area of our lives. There's a lot of ands.
Yeah.
And we just want to give people an avenue to have that conversation. Hopefully that will provoke good conversation. And hopefully we meet some pretty cool people, and we bring some pretty cool stories to people that, aren't the popular stories being told right now within our own community and outside of our community. There's a lot of people that have some pretty powerful stories, and then there's some hilarious ones.
Yeah.
And we're going to sit and rest in a bunch of them hilarious ones too. So it's just going to be, I'm excited. I think it's going to be pretty cool.
This is an endeavor that I literally could have only dreamed of. And so to be a part of it is pretty incredible. When I think to describe our typical guest, who would join us on the show, who would you, if you could build the archetype of that person, who would it be?
I think it's going to be somebody that lives the hard life.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard life meaning it's, that person that does the right thing even when it doesn't make sense, just because sometimes you got to do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. And maybe they haven't always lived that way. Maybe they've been in a pretty tough spot for a long time, and now they're on their way out, and they got some great tools to help get other people there. But the Kings Creek are the unsung heroes. That's the Creekers. That's the people that are working behind the scenes that aren't doing it for the glory. They're not doing it because of what notoriety they're going to get, but nothing could start without them, and nothing could function without them. And that's the person that I feel like, always the real nice looking guy or girl, lady, woman, however you want to say it. They're the ones that are out front, just the poster child. But I'm going to tell you, there's somebody made that poster.
Right.
And to me, that's the one that gets forgotten about. And I just think it's time that we start understanding and recognizing some of those people, because they have a wealth of knowledge that we can all benefit from.
Absolutely. I second that to, the nth degree. And the other thing I think is important too, for like some of the more known guests that we might have on, is humanizing them to a sense where it's like, we think that they live a certain way based on what we see on social media, but our goal is to get to connect with that person and level with them on a human to human basis. Like, they struggle the same ways that we struggle. That's right. Maybe in different aspects of their life, but emotions are emotions, and we all feel them in a similar fashion.
Right. And I think in any industry that you yourself are the product,
mm-hmm.
You can, it's very tough to navigate through life, because you've got to sell yourself so much that you lose touch with what's important, and you lose touch with the outside world. A lot of the guys that we have become close to in Nashville, for example, the music people, music artists, a lot of people think, well, once they made it, they've changed dramatically. Well, it's not. They don't change. They're still the same people. But unfortunately, the people around them change, because as their success grows, everybody around them thinks that they need to treat them differently. And that, it's just, they're shielded from a lot of things, and that's not what they want deep down inside. And, once you befriend a couple people that are successful in that industry, you start to see that there's an emptiness there. The most popular people in the world are a lot of times the loneliest, because it's, we tell our kids all the time. We just had a conversation with one of our children that, it's lonely at the top. But the air's cleaner, and sooner or later you just hope that, more people will come alongside you. But this is a tough world for a young person trying to do the right thing to live in, because mm-hmm. You're not in the cool group anymore. And so it's the same thing with a lot of the guys that we deal with, in Nashville and in other cities. And of course, by saying Nashville, we're just referring to, the country music industry. It's a tough world. It's a very lonely town.
Yeah. Yeah. There's several songs out there. I can name a few, but the first that comes to my head is Morgan Wallen's song, Living the Dream. I think, yeah, Living the Dream. Basically the song outlines that exact thing. Like, it looks one way, but realistically, like I'm lonely sometimes.
For sure.
You got a lot of fake friends, I think, at that point. But to bring it back to a more uplifting and bright sense, I think our hope is to also be a beacon of light and to kind of share our love of God's provision with the listeners and hopefully steward conversations in the best light that glorify Him.
That's right. And I can assure you that my goal is to help other people see that, one, there's a way out if they're in a situation that's not the best situation ever. Because I never want to make light of somebody that's going through a super, real tough time. However, I think that for the majority of us, I think it's pretty easy to see, the blessings that we've got and how, we're overlooking, we're kind of stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. We're focusing on some things that we could easily put to bed and move forward. But it's always easier to talk about when you're not in the conflict. And so hopefully we can kind of head off some of those before they become a real issue for people.
That's awesome. Yeah. And what I wanted to say is, people listening, if you want to send in stories or maybe a question that you have, many of you might be familiar with the Clock Creekin' hashtag on Instagram. Anything that would be kind of like categorized under that, or like I said, a question, email that to thekingscreekpodcast@gmail.com, and maybe we will talk about it on the show and give our 2 cents on the matter.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're definitely not opposed to hearing about potential guests. If you've got somebody that is that unsung hero that we talk about a lot, that we can get in here and just really dig inside and see what's going on in that brain and try to figure out how we can multiply it and get it out to the rest of the world, because so we could all learn from it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me what needs to be. It's very easy to spread, divisiveness spreads like a wildfire, but those that are connected, those that can, with a good sense of humor, that can laugh something off, that's often not talked about because it's not cool. It's not newsworthy. So we're just going to try to do our part in getting some of those. So if you know people that would be great guests, we'd love to hear about them. We'd love to talk to them, and then we'll just go from there with it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that I think kind of wraps up episode 1. This is mostly just an introduction podcast, getting you guys primed and ready for what's to come. And I think we are going to kick this off with the Thankful series. It might be called something when we go to kick it off, but that's kind of what we've chalked it up to be now. And it's just a series on gratitude and what it means to be thankful. And we just think that's appropriate with the holidays coming up.
Right. I mean, especially just, we're going to start out, I think, by defining it. What is that? What does it look like in your life? And then obviously it's going to be about some people that are very grateful for things and that probably shouldn't be.
Right. And
that's the things that we want to uncover, is that there is a silver lining. And I hope that people will be able to connect with this and really change some people's mentality, maybe their thought process. And that one's going to be a fun series to kick it off with, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's someone out there that doesn't look like you, but maybe is going through some similar things. So I would just encourage you to have a conversation. As y'all said, it might just be the hat that sparks the conversation to a new best friend.
That's exactly right. And there's countless stories, and I'd love to share some of those stories, and I'm sure we will. And it's just so humbling to me when something as simple as a duck on a hat can create a relationship. And we've got many examples of that if we're just willing to let our guard down a little bit, be vulnerable, and look at things from other people's point of view. It's not always treat other people how you want to be treated. A lot of times you just need to treat people for the time being how they want to be treated. And if you concentrate on some of that, then we can get over a lot of these little bitty issues we've got and get on to some bigger ones like Coke or Pepsi.
That's a good one. And it's Diet Coke. That's the answer. It's none of those. It's Diet Coke.
Yeah. Artificial sweetener is good for you.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's all right. We'll die eventually. All right. Well, that'll wrap it up. That's a fantastic one to end it on. Diet Coke or Pepsi, or Coke or Pepsi.
Yeah, I don't even think down south, it's worth discussing.
Yeah.
Pepsi's for north of the Mason-Dixon line. Coke is for humans.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. All right, guys. Well, until next time, grab a life jacket, jump in the creek.
It's a rough ride.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening. If you would please leave us a review and a rating, that is how we get the word out about this podcast. And lastly, go check us out at Kings Creek Apparel. Thank you.